Yo!
Good, I'm in the right room. Excellent. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to turn this over to Boulder Media, and they're going to take you behind the scenes, looking at early designs for the show, and take you on a short sequence on how an episode is made. Okay? Now, you have submitted questions before the panel. Unfortunately, there won't be a live Q&A. If we've got time at the end, after their presentation, I will go through the questions that have been submitted and approved, okay? So without further ado, can I welcome to the stage the team from Boulder Media!
Hi, so we're going to show you the making of. We can't be really talking about scripting or characterization and near this because all this was done over in LA, it was decided over in LA. We were making the series, we were designing it to start with, we were doing the art direction, and then we were doing the storyboarding and we were going to final product. So what we're going to be talking to you is mostly cartoons. How do you make cartoons about Transformers? And it was not as easy as all that. So we're going to start now quickly with a quick presentation of the early designs, how we started. We feel that Cyberverse has a very distinct style. We're quite happy with it. We were looking for 2D, something quite graphic, something rather new in the Transformer universe. And we were very, very glad that I think we were able to achieve something which is we're very pleased with, okay? So I'm going to show you now how we got to that stage, how we actually got it made eventually. Marco Cardona here, our art director, will be then talking to you about the dual art direction of the series. And Ehud Landsberg will talk to you about going from animatic all the way to final product. Before I start, I should present myself. My name is Jean Texier, and I co-directed the series along with Ehud over here, okay? So we're going to start with the original designs. If I click this button here, it should happen. Ta-da! Okay, here we go. So as you can see, these are the very earliest, some of the earliest designs that was actually ever made on the series. Boulder Media was given the task from Hasbro for over a year to mess around with designs. Nobody was really quite sure the way it was going to go. Was it going to be cartoony? Was it going to be for kids? Was it going to be for older? Whatever. So they had this person who's, I think it's very good, he's doing like visual development on the series here. As you can see basically here, he wasn't quite sure whether he was going to go for serious. The age group wasn't quite determined. And originally it was called Transformer Origins, if my memory serves me well. The thing that came from those here is that Hasbro were very happy to see Cybertron, this is Cybertron here, looking like New York or something like that. Like he wasn't supposed to be like a big sci-fi town, they want to be like very much downtown. So he was able to carry that and we put that into our series eventually. So there's another picture here. So you can see here the characters look like fairly, how do you say, young age, if you want, Transform and so forth. Like Bumblebee is like a very young child. Optimus Prime is also not very well designed yet. But the look is there, the feel is there for looking like basically like a futurist New York rather than anything else. More of the same, as you can see, and Hasbro were delighted with this. That's really what they wanted for Cybertron. They didn't want like this big, crazy thing. They wanted to look like somewhere you could actually live somehow. So that's one of the things. Another one again, with the streets were looking more and more like Blade Runner-y, if you want. And everybody was happy with that. More of the same again, as you can see, they wanted to, the legend thing was working, okay. Well, you can see like really like people living in the street with the big trailers and so forth, and like very much what you'd expect to see almost in a normal street. They do have an issue though, as you can see over here, some huge transformer beside small buildings. So they are not really solved that particular issue. That's another one again. It was supposed to be full of colors and everything. I personally wasn't quite sure this would work because for me, I'm not quite sure what to look at here. Everything is very bright and shiny and there's lack of focus, I think. Another one again, I personally feel this one was getting closer, a little bit closer to what the final look was going to be of the series. There's more of a focus, there's more control somehow. One, the very last one this person made, and everybody was quite happy with this, like we have Optimus Prime here in the city, it looks very much like film noir type of thing, thriller type of thing, and people were quite happy with this here. But it wasn't there yet. Another one again, of Optimus Prime, obviously. Originally, they were thinking of making Transformers Cyberverse, because it got then the name of Cyberverse, as a 2D series, meaning there will be no computer animation. When you make a 2D series, you have to simplify designs as much as you can, because they eventually have to be animated. So that's a Megatron here. As you can see, like it's got a big head, it's fairly cartoonized somehow. But nevertheless, the people who were going to be animating the thing, possibly, they were freaking out. They said, there's no way we can animate that, it's just too complicated. There's too many objects, too many rigging, too many whatever. So they asked us to simplify and simplify and simplify. And the more we simplify, the less like Transformer it look like. That's one here that would have worked, okay? But it would be very, very impractical to animate. It's Megatron here, obviously. Another one again, so we're trying out with different designs all the time. As you can see, all the different parts of him were still there. And they had to be kept there because Hasbro, because of the toys and so forth. So it was becoming increasingly impractical to animate it in 2D. More research on Optimus Prime, as you can see, looking slightly elderly. Another one again. I think it's like red drawings, so I don't have any issue with those. But the fact is that it was not possible to animate it like that. More again, more again. This one's quite nice. He's trying with different expression with floating eyebrows, as you can see. First one's a Bumblebee. So, yeah, I'm not an expert in Transformers. I won't hide the facts here. So I don't know where that face came from originally, but that's what they were pushing for at the beginning. More like here, it was painted. It's fine here, but it looks a bit creepy to me, I think. This is probably more cheerful, more what we're looking for, but that's not the one we went with eventually. And this is also the craziest designs that we got. They were losing their head.
Here we go with that one. Here we go with that one. Look at him.
But they were losing their head. They didn't know. They were all over the place. You know, should we simplify it, make it more complicated? 2D, 3D, 4D, whatever. So we had this guy who was doing the designs, or this one here, which is even funnier, I think. And but I don't know what you guys think. Would you have liked to see this on the screen or not? No? All right. All right. So eventually, so I'll talk to you later how we made a transition to go from what you just seen up to now to what it actually eventually looked like. So I'm talking first about characters, then we'll talk about backgrounds in a minute. So as you can see, this is the first drawing, personally, that really was made under our supervision, and that I feel like we were getting somewhere. I kind of liked it. It was full of strength and power, it was full of appeal, so it was working really well for me. But it did not have a nose, and Hasbro had a big issue about that, because they wanted the characters to look as human as possible, so that people could identify with their feelings. Because contrary to other Transformers series, there are no humans whatsoever in Cyberverse. So the characters you can see on the screen, you have to be able to identify with them somehow. So they have to be able to act a little bit. So the less abstract their faces, the better. So eventually, another example here of him without the nose again. But I thought it was quite charming, like more like a little boy if you want. So I kind of liked it, but Hasbro would not go for that. So eventually they gave him a nose, and that's the way it actually looked like. So we got this guy over in Italy, Francesco Giglio, who did really, really good work in terms of character design. And as for the main characters, he's the guy who really created the look eventually, under our supervision, of course. But that's the first one that we got, and Hasbro said, that's it, that's the one, okay? And from then on, everything went a lot easier. We knew what we were going to try to achieve. So there you go. So you have three here. You have the one over there without the nose, looks like an insect, like a bumblebee. We have the one we ended up with here, and this is the one we were given to in the first place by Hasbro, like the brand model, the G1 brand model. Moving on, so that's eventually when it was fully rendered. That's the bumblebee you can see on Cyberverse if you watch the series. There's another one again, done by Francesco again, of Bumblebee and Windblade. That's a nice one. We like that. Well, I like those kind of things because it's telling us a lot about the character relationship, and that matters. And it's a nice drawing, I think. We try to have like a brother-sister relationship between Bumblebee and Windblade. Okay, there's no sexual content at all. Okay. I hope so. All right. Alright, so this one here, so that's the first, this is just a cycle as you can see, because we kept that to our production studio, rendered him, and they gave us those kind of cycles so we would actually see how would those guys actually move. So they were the first tests they were given. Now, here comes Marco Caradona. He came in, he did a test for us, which is the first preparatory sketch for it here, this one here, which turned into that here. And we saw something in there. We saw like a drama in a cartoony kind of way. So he was kind of ticking all the boxes, I think. So we brought him in, and he did more work for us. He worked really, really hard in the beginning, and then he got to be really sloppy and lazy towards the end of the series. Anyway, that's another one that is done also. I really like it. I mean, for me, it reminded me of the Warner Brothers type of the backgrounds, like Maurice Noble or Samurai Jack, or this kind of stuff if you want. And we got really, really impressed by that stuff here. Because there's evil here, there's depth, there's a depth of field, I mean. And so it really worked for us. And we put the character on top to see whether they would actually interact very well with each other. We're quite happy with the result. Eventually Marco came in and he started to work on the background, so that's one of the earliest ones he's done. And eventually it turned out to be like this here. Okay? So I'm going back again, that's a rough pass. So as you can see, we were trying to avoid parallels, okay? Eventually we kind of had to give that up because it was impractical. But at the beginning, we had to style it as much as we could. So we're trying to avoid parallels as much as we can. So even to the edge, to the screen's edge, for instance. So all the objects are kind of sharp looking and a bit twisted somehow. And we were very happy with that.
So sorry to interrupt you very briefly, we were trying to develop a visual language for the show, and as normally the practice in both in animation and game, if you're trying to essentially kind of lock the visual down, you go by tentatively. You kind of draw a bit, see what's the reaction of the client, see what you think of what you've been doing, and it took few takes to get to that one, and there were a few qualities in this image that both us and Hasbro liked. Maybe it's not particularly subtle, but we needed to kind of deliver a clear message. We knew, if you watched Cyberverse, that in season 1 the Decepticon shuttle was kind of an important location where a lot of scenes were happening, so we were thinking of, okay, so what's make a Decepticon room look like a Decepticon? So I thought of an angular line, kind of the purple, which is quite iconic of the faction. Maybe it's not particularly subtle, but I think at some point we saw a little bit of what this style could look like, and we went on.
Also, as you can see, we try to simplify everything. There's no complicated UIs on consoles, whatever. Everything has to be sharp and simple and practical. Okay, so this is some of the first imagery that we did.
Still my presentation.
Some of the imagery that we put in situ. We put a lot of texture, sharp edges and so forth, and we were delighted. And the people from Hasbro came in for a visit. I forget their names, but they're quite high up in the Hasbro hierarchy. And they were thrilled, they really were thrilled. This is perfect, exactly what we're looking for. So I was delighted myself because I could see that happening. We could make that to 3D, looking 2D and so forth. It was ticking all the boxes. Then we tried to be like actual designing sets and so forth. So it was the first attempt at the Decepticon shuttle. So we tried to carry some kind of stylization into the objects, the spaceships and whatever props we're going to be using. So Marco again did this one here. I really like this one. It reminded me of a kind of a bat, so it was kind of creepy, which is fine for the Decepticon shuttle. And so it evolved from there, but I kind of like that. Anyway, then we went to a more military-like, more like GI Joe, whatever type of thing. And thank God the guys from Hasbro were around. They said, no, you don't want to do that. This is nice, it's good stuff, you know, I mean, it looks really cool. But they wanted this, they wanted to do more cartoony, sleeker kind of object somehow. So we went for that, and it was a very good choice on their part, I have to say. Okay, so after that, it was much easier. All the decisions had been made regarding the backgrounds, the props, the sets, the characters, everything. So we just had to make it. So we found some other artists who were able to actually paint in that style. So this is all hand-painted by Photoshop. This is not a 3D model, okay? But we tried to see whether all the decisions we had made were able to be carried on by other artists, and it worked out fine. And it's another example, if you want to see again, no parallels, everything is looking pretty sharp and so forth. And it went on from there altogether. So I'm going to leave you there for shortly, just a couple of examples how which evolved from very simple backgrounds, you can see very simple visuals, to what I think personally I really like it. They're great sets, okay? We can do lots of stuff. We got this, eventually we go as far as this here. This is all just conceptual stuff before it was modeled, okay? And we got this even going for the same thing. So as you can see from the very cartoony Cybertron stuff, like hesitant about which was going to go. Then once we made a decision, it was full speed ahead, and for me it worked out really, really well, okay? So I'm going to leave you to Marco and I'll talk to you about the art direction of the series, okay?
Hello. Also, Jean, can I use half of the slides I prepared in my presentation, so it's going to be faster. So as he said, I don't know how much you know about art direction. I'm going to try not to bore you, but essentially when you work on a cartoon, you need to make sure, since a cartoon is, a series is based on different episodes, that the look remains consistent, cohesive from across episodes. And it's particularly important in, for example, in our case, for two reasons. Also because we had two directors. You might know that sometimes, both in films and cartoons, directors tend to have a particular imprint that tends to imprint his or her vision on the show. When you got two people, the role of someone like me was trying to make it smooth, just to make sure that they wouldn't create in bespoke visuals or exception in each one of their episodes. So here's what I tried to do. So I prepared this document as, it was kind of like a portfolio thing, so I'm going to skip through a few parts because Jean already talked about that. I just want to give you a little, really little overview of our work. So as Jean said at the beginning, the show was meant to be in 2D, so not without computer graphic, not 3D modeled characters and set. And you're aware of the difference between 2D and 3D. Do you guys know the difference? Yeah. You do? Okay, great. So the thing is, the tone of the series changed as well. It was meant to be for 6 to 12 years old of age. We had certain trivia, if you want to gossip. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to talk about it in detail, but the tone shifted quite a bit. At the beginning, if you see the images that John showed you before, it was quite whimsical. There was a lot of colors. The overall mood was quite nice. We got a bit darker as the series progressed, and I think the style needed to reflect that. So at the beginning, what I'm going to show you, click, move over. Go back, where you welcome. Yeah, but so at the beginning of the show, when I jumped on board in Boulder, we started sketching stuff because we didn't have a clear idea where to go. Because as I said, the Hasbro has recently changed the scope of the show, moving from 2D to 3D. We thought that there were certain limitations that were no longer there, and we had more tools that we needed to use. So at the beginning we sketched a lot. As we said before, the Decepticon shuttle was one of the main locations, so that's where we started. This would be the early design that I developed mostly myself, sometimes with Jean, and the other director was Robert Cullen, before he would join the show. At the very, very early days, we tried as well, other than the design, to kind of get a sense on how the overall mood would look like. If you guys know, colors influence mood a lot. Like in your bedroom, probably not going to have black, because it's not really a relaxing type of color. So colors influence the way we perceive things. And at the beginning, we were trying to explore how far could we push the look of the show to deliver the best drama that the script was calling for. So certain mood paintings, as they're called, you see this one too. So then again, this one helped kickstart the whole stylization, I guess. By the time production started, I'll give you a super quick insight on how things work. Like normally we'll be having what we call a story session. There we would be reading the script that we are lucky to have, which is not always the case in animation. We'll be having a couple of production people, the directors and myself. reading through them and trying to understand what was needed to be designed for that episode. If you watch the series, the top part, the top design, you see there are sketches that we did after reading the script, where a particular location on Cybertron that Bumblebee had to investigate as a scout. These would be the type of brief I would give the artists in the art department. We are at a team of 12 people in-house. They will be getting these sketches from me and from the directors, and they will be helping providing location designs. Sometimes when we had the luxury, because timing is always a luxury, especially in TV shows, we try to give indication for colors and whatnot. When production, then pre-production finished, we start receiving material from the overseas studio in India, resembling the 3D modeling and the animation of the show. And this would be the type of job I'll be doing. It sounds kind of boring, and in certain days it was, but I was mostly reviewing endless stream of material from them, checking whether the Bumblebee 3D model was correct, whether the type of effects that they were doing were fitting with the art style we picked up. So it was a continuous reviewing process, and it's still going on as we speak. I mean, we're not there, but we do. These were the type of thing we got from the studio. For example, as you can see, it was one of the early tests of animation. One thing we tried to avoid was too much of a CG look. We thought that certain shows that we had before, namely Prime, did certain things really good. It was, I think, he had a good art direction when it comes to color and contrast. I didn't particularly like the CG look of it, but it's kind of belonging more to the time in which it was made. We were trying to keep things 2D looking, also because we had a big question. We weren't sure whether or not kids from 6 to 12 years old would like stuff that looked too much computer graphic. So that's why we tried to maintain, as far as we could, a 2D look. I'm going to move quickly, so hopefully I'm not going to bore you too much, but when I joined the show, I had a few goals in mind, and the more I learned about the series, the more certain that these goals become clear. One of the things that I wanted to do, and I think we achieve more often than not, was the fact that we wanted something 2D looking that was kind of fresh enough to be interesting for younger audiences, which is something that Hasbro was really keen on. But we wanted to be quite faithful, or at least give some insight, not some insight, but some eye candy, so to speak, or some pleasure even in older audiences, because we were sure that certain people wouldn't be 6 or 12, we were probably 30s or 40s. And we tried to achieve that. Another thing was maintain some of the imperfection that the 2D looks has, and which I think is the major tool you have against how artificial certain times the 3D looks. I don't know, now it's a bit dark, but the other thing we had in mind was trying to maintain things clear. This is mostly an action show, it doesn't go particularly in depth. I mean, it talks a bit about the lore, etc., but most of the time you got a lot of action. People kicking each other, shooting, chasing cars and plane. Action needs to be clear. If action is 50% of the show, if you don't understand 50% of what's going on screen, then we failed as a creator. And it needs to be production friendly. Means like it needed essentially to be done within the budget we had. Of course, and I'm almost done. When you plan something, most of the times things go wrong or go differently from what you planned. So there were certain cases of things that we catered for and they happened as they were intended to, but others didn't. So as we were working, certain challenges showed up and we had to deal with it almost on a daily basis, and we had really fun days. So whoever wants to understand. But the main, let's say, areas of problem were, first of all, characters. Jean showed you before some of the really cute, successful design that this lead designer, Francesco, did at the beginning of the show. And while they were great looking, Hasbro was super happy about it, they were done mostly with 2D in mind. Like they weren't meant to be animated in 3D at the beginning, because the show was meant to be in 2D. So when we tried to translate that on an actual model, we ended up having huge list of problems, like, you would have volumes of, for example, of the shoulder pad, of the legs, they wouldn't, interact with the face, and the guys couldn't move properly, the polygon compenetrating each other. We had sort of visual weird artifacts that would happen, and they were making the job difficult. Another thing was the texturing. Texturing is the way you color the 3D model, both characters and set. It would create confusion. We have giant characters that have really complicated silhouette. If you add more visual noise on screen, and it's going to be hard to understand what's going on. Think, no offense to anybody, but the Michael Bay film. You might like them, I don't like them, I'm not entering into that area, I'm just saying that visually they're very noisy. When something happens on screen, you barely know what's going on. And the thing got worse. I happened to watch a few excerpts from the last movies. It was really hard to understand what was going on. We couldn't afford that, okay? Also because the average attention span of the audience we intended to make the show for is low enough on its own, so if you just create visual noise, it's going to be even harder. And the last things were visual effects. The studio that worked with us, it was, and he is very good in certain areas, so like he's very good in creating lighting and modeling the character, etc. But he has a background of mostly making visual effects for films. So we struggled quite a bit to try to stylize the visual effect, and by that I mean, laser blast or fires, smoke, to something that didn't stand out too badly. Of course, we had some problem with lighting too, because there was a 3D set that we had to, continuously update as the requirement of the production changed. And the last one was the visual language. The visual language was what we discussed before. We needed to make sure that the visual choices we selected were consistent, and that one created problems. Just to give you a practical example, we choose to avoid curvilinear lines because they normally belongs to organic. When I say organic, I mean like animals, a person, trees. These characters are huge metal robots with really sharp features. If you end up having a really weird silhouette, Michael Bay again, it's going to be hard to understand what's going on screen. So these were most of the problem we had to face. And I think overall, I don't want to sing our own praises too much, but I think we ended up having something mostly good, and I choose some picks that I think are kind of the highlight of season 1. Now, I'm not sure about the release date for season 2, but I know it's gonna get released soon, later on this year. I think in the US will be on September, if I'm correct. It'll be nice to see how certain of our work progressed, and if you enjoyed the show, I'm pretty sure you're gonna enjoy season 2. So, with this one in mind, I'm going to thank you for your attention and leave it to Ehud.
Could you set up the clip? Yeah, cool. So just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Ehud Landsberg. I joined the show kind of well after all of the stuff you've seen was really established. That's kind of the reason I joined the show, because I've seen some of this concept art and it was really impressive, and I really thought it could be an awesome show. The part I'm going to focus on is basically the production process of one small sequence from one of the episodes of season 1. When Marco has talked about how the show kind of has a 2D look, but essentially it is a 3D show. So a lot of the challenges that we faced are the same as every 3D show. The first stage of production after the script is usually, well, it's always the storyboard. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concepts of animation, but storyboard is basically like a comic book that plays on a timeline in time, and it's kind of a blueprint of what the show is going to be. And I'll play a short clip now from episode 9, Shadow Striker, of the animatic, which is a storyboard edited to a timeline. And let's have a look.
A machete? Who uses that? Is that all you got? Sweet soulless prime. Oh, perfect. A dead end.
Alright, I forgot to set up the character. This is one of the new characters on the show, Shadow Striker. She's Bumblebee's nemesis. This is a very solid storyboard by one of our best story artists, Matteo Pincelli, right? The next stage of production is always, in the 3D show, is always the most challenging, because this is where a leap happens from the flat 2D drawing to the 3D space and 3D models. This is the first interpretation in 3 dimensions to the 2 dimensions of the drawing, and this is where, like, if there are problems, they're going to rise to the surface. So this is where me and John usually pay most attention to how things are framed, if the characters, who even with our simplified design sometimes tend to have complicated silhouettes, if they're readable enough, if the actions are clear, if the cameras are in the best place that they can be to show the action like we had in the storyboards, then we pay attention to all of that stuff, especially in the layout stage, which is basically the 3D initial interpretation of the 2D animatic. Can we play this section?
A machete? Who uses that? Is that all you got? Sweet soulless prime. Oh, perfect. A dead end.
Right? So basically what happens in layout is, as you've seen, just the main poses of the characters are put in, so it's kind of replicating the storyboard almost beat for beat. And it's basically the blueprint for how the animation is going to look like. With each stage, from now on, the look, the motion, the look, the acting is going to be refined, and we try to kind of push it, make it more clear, make it more appealing, make the action more interesting and gripping with each stage. And this particular episode was pretty straightforward, easy to work with, because the storyboard was great, the story was great, the script was already very solid. Shadow Striker was a really cool character to work with, so it was just about not messing it up, really, this one. Some episodes were more difficult and we had to do a lot more work to make things to get things to work. But with that in mind, let's see the next stage of animation and how it progressed.
A machete? Who uses that? Is that all you got? Sweet soulless prime. Oh, perfect. A dead end.
steps in between, but basically the next stage would be the finished episode, but it's missing basically all the bells and whistles. The sound design, the final music, the lighting, the rendering. This is when the final thing is supposed to look like all this great concept art, this great designs that we've seen. And one like an example of how we try to push it a bit further to the next level is doing a chase scene when Shadow Striker, after she gets stinged and frozen. We felt that it feels like the energy goes a bit down. Like there's something a bit sluggish. Like they're running, there's a chasing, but we're not feeling things as strong as we could. So that is when our composer Maximilian Repka came into the picture, and we asked him, "Can you add like cool chase music to push the energy while these characters are running?" And the final result, which I'll show you in a second, is with that music and with all the lighting and everything. This is basically what you see in the final episode. So let's hit it.
A machine? Who uses that? Is that all you got? Sweet soulless prime. Oh, perfect. Dead end.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for the full process. There's never a point where we finish an episode and we're 100% happy. There's always something that we can push, or we feel like, we could have done better. But as with animation, with all things, like time runs out, and then you have to be kind of at peace with what you've managed to achieve. And and I think that this one episode in particular is one of the best ones, the one that I'm most happy with. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I like Michael Bay. I don't know what's your problem, really. That's it.
Yes, I can speak. Excellent. Thanks, guys. That was really amazing, and I especially liked seeing the line drawings go to like full animation. That's something I've never seen before, so thank you for that. Thank you. I've got a few questions that have been submitted to you by the audience beforehand. So we've got a couple of minutes, so I'll just run them through if that's okay. So what other Transformers show do you like, and which ones were more influential?
Should I take that? Well, when I was a kid, I grew up watching G1, so it's obviously the first big influence. It has been a very long gap between when I was a kid and when I actually started working on the show, so I kind of had to do a quick catch-up. So I kind of took a quick survey of what are the premier shows that have been since G1 and this show, and I think my opinion is kind of the consensus also with most people that this one was primed, this one was animated. For me, where the biggest standouts is, wow, you can do something really cool with this 30, 40-year-old franchise still, and trying to take as much inspiration from those as I could.
Thank you very much. What are you most proud of in the series?
Art direction.
You would say that.
I think it was a great achievement. Like as Marco was saying earlier, we were able to achieve. It was supposed to be for a younger audience, and we can raise it up somehow. I mean, we have an episode, Megatron is my hero, for instance, with a big car chase in the Cybertron, and we're always running as a car, running through the street, being chased by Starscream and a few other jets. I don't think it's ever been done before. If it has been done before, I'm not aware of it. But you feel more thriller type of thing. animated. We got strangling Bambi. So there was some kind of, we tried to raise up, if you want, the bar, if you want, in terms of what could be achieved. I'm quite proud of that myself.
Okay, you mentioned as I was coming up onto the stage that there's always things that you think that you could improve on. If you could pick one thing that you thought you could improve on, what would it be?
Effects.
Definitely effects. We had a lot
Effects were...
We had a lot of problems. They eventually got it, but it was really, really hard to translate the 2D feel to effects together. So that was a big headache that we had, but eventually we got
I'd say we kind of content of what we get now. What is going to happen in season 2, probably see some improvement, and which is good. Being nitpicky as we all three of us are, I'd say that the effects were probably one of the things. For me, I would have added a minor thing, but it mostly related maybe to the visual. I'd say even the organic stuff, some of which you're going to see soon, like trees and clouds, I think they're particularly weak, but because the time we had to develop was short. But overall, I think the series is quite pleasing as well. If I had to pick up effects, I would say it.
I would have liked to be given the chance of developing the acting as well of the characters, if you could. But we were not always given the time and the way to the skill, the time. Basically, it was just not the time to actually develop that somehow. So that was a little bit frustrating at times.
See, I was going to ask you what the challenges were, but you've kind of answered that. So I will ask you the most important question. Who is your favourite Transformer? Don't laugh, it's a serious question.
I think you should get that one.
I like Macadam. I don't know if you guys see him.
I know why.
I was.
Please don't break the stage.
I did the first original sketches for him, and I kind of like the way he looked like. He was quite cheerful, he's nice, he's different, he's new. So I kind of like a big Banu kind of character, and I kind of like that. But maybe you guys have different ideas.
Macadam is interesting. He has more to him than meets the eye, and so it's interesting.
I think he's annoying personally.
Yeah. For me, it would be Shockwave because I always like the baddies most of the times. Shockwave, I think, could be kind of the perfect leader of the Decepticon faction if he had enough charisma to be listened to or followed. It tends to have really good plans, as you might probably see in the series, but they always fail, I guess, in execution because of the type of people he's used to work with, which is kind of fun. It's like evil genius type of vibe, and I like it. I like him a lot. I like the voice actor as well a lot. I think he really injects a lot of personality. As you might know, some of the panels that we had before and that we're going to probably have later on as well, sound and voice acting tends to contribute in huge scale to what's the final result is. We focus a lot on animation, on acting, on colors and whatever, but music and voice actor actually made the show as well. So in that regard, that's why I think Shockwaves, at least in season 1, is one of the best. Probably going to be surprised in season 2, I guess, because there's, few more characters in my life. I know. But yeah, Shockwave for me.
No spoilers, please.
No spoilers.
I think I have 2. One is Cosmos. He's not in the show, but in terms of their flying saucer,
I didn't say I had to be in the show.
how can you not like that? Yeah, that's kind of really what I like. That's my favorite growing up. And the other one is Starscream, because he's probably, in my opinion, the most flawed character in Transformers. He was flawed in like a very good way. Like he has this inner turmoil that he's kind of trying to balance his struggle for power and his starvation of power with how he has really low self-esteem. And that's, I don't know, it reminds me of someone.
Excellent. Oh, not speaking into the microphone. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'd love you to give a massive, massive round of applause to the team from all the media. Thank you guys. Go 10